Hello, my name is Dale Newton and I'm an animation supervisor at Framestore. Today I'm going to take you behind the scenes of Wicked, where I will show you some of the CG and animation work that went into creating the animals for Oz, the animals of Oz in Wicked and Wicked for Good. At the center of our work in developing these characters was a simple challenge: creating Ozian animals that feel authentic with emotional and engaging performances that sit naturally alongside their human counterparts. But before we begin, a little bit about me. Before joining Framestore, and I joined the commercial division around 20 years ago, I had been to art school and completed a fine arts degree in South Africa, where I was born. I did not have a clear idea of what I wanted to do with myself after leaving school, but had developed an enthusiasm for CGI whilst at university in the early 90s, and soon found work as a CG generalist in commercials and TV. With my lifelong love of film and animation, the path I wanted to take gradually became clear. This is from my first ever Framestore job back in 2004, a commercial about a little paper character named Hector that tears himself out of a newspaper and comes to life and journeys in search of some space. Actually, an e-space. It was a Renault advert for France. Rigging and animating this little 2D character in 3D made for an interesting challenge, but I soon became restless for bigger challenges. My first foray into film animation came in 2008 when I was still working with the commercials team, a storybook tale of knights, dragons, and fairy tale princesses. I supervised the 3-minute sequence and was involved at many stages of production, from design and rigging through to animation and comp. In commercials, such an important time for my own development as a young CG artist. And this was followed in 2009 by a second film project, still working with the commercials team, which again had very strong illustrative roots. Then, in seeing that I'd become rather a jack of all trades but a master of none, I formally shifted over to the film VFX division to focus on animation specifically, and for a slight change in tone, I had an opportunity to work on this movie, Gravity. It was in the few minutes around this moment in the film where a desperate Ryan by Sandra Bullock was struggling to hold on to a doomed George Clooney that I had prevised and then worked as a lead animator on in post-production. Coming from commercials, where schedules are at a maximum 6 months, this being my first stint in VFX, I was on the show for 2.5 years. A shock to the system. After that, in 47 Ronin, I was animation lead on the sequence where the sorceress Mizuki transformed into a magical serpent, where we used moray eels as reference for the magical flying creature. My favourite Marvel show to work on, where I worked as animation lead again, we co-developed Rocket and Groot at Framestore along with the now sadly departed MPC. The kitchen staff in Beauty and the Beast each had their amazing challenges, not least because it was my first role supervising animation at Framestore Film VFX. After which we brought Pikachu and his pals to life in 2018's Detective Pikachu, on which I again supervised animation. Afterward, helping to create a little pop-up book sequence for Paddington 2. And then bringing naturalistic creatures to life was at the heart of my work on A Boy Called Christmas. Straddling that line between natural animal behaviour and a performance for screen was important in bringing Mika and Blitzen to life. This was our COVID show, delivered way back in 2020. Another illustrative project, we imagined the psychotic Cletus Cassidy's autobiographical doodles coming to life on a postcard for Venom 2. So, on to Wicked. Framestore London's animation challenges in Wicked Film 1 relate mostly to Doctor Dillamond, a sentient go-professor from Shiz University and his fellow animal colleagues. In Wicked Part 1, we learn that the animals of Oz are being mistreated and suppressed. Dr. Dillamond is a key figure for Elphaba, providing an ally for her and inspiring her fight against the wizard's oppressive regime. These are some of the early Framestore concepts, showing him as a very naturalistic-looking goat, but with intelligent and soulful eyes. Director John Chu's brief for the animal professors was simple. They had to read as natural animals, but they needed something whimsical to distinguish them as being particular to and of Oz. Some item of clothing to humanize them. A designer hat, item of clothing, a monocle, The whiskers on a snow leopard here, or eyelashes as on our owl. They had to be fully expressive actors, yet preserve their believable animal anatomy and silhouette. The central tension in finding performances was balancing animalness with actorness. Too animal, and you lose nuance. Too human, and you break the spell. Dr. Dillamond offered an exciting challenge. He features in several important sequences with many close-ups. His story is emotional, with an arc spanning both films. When building an animal asset, it is always a good idea to base your work on particular animal reference. So, back in March of 2023, several of our team went to Buck's Goat Centre in the Buckinghamshire to record reference of a goat named Summer for reference as the animal blueprint for Dr. Dillamond. And this is Summer. The eating and chewing gave us a good range of reference when creating mouth shapes. Look at her eyes here. I'll come back and talk about them later. Both Summer and her pal Autumn were quite young goats, and not really good reference for the tone of Dillamond's movements, as he needed to be an older goat, so we found the better, stronger references elsewhere. A nice feeling of firm floppiness in the ears here, which we did attempt to mimic. And here is Summer assisted by her handlers into our Capture Labs photographic array, which is used to provide the modelers with a three-dimensional scan to start with. And jumping a great many steps ahead here is an early version of Dillamond with a groom in a concept match pose. Just to check that we were on the right track. We would still need to put Dr. Dillamond in costume. And voila! Jumping another great many steps, we now have a clothed Dr. Dillamond, and here he is in his academic garb, and then something a little more comfortable for hanging around at home. This is an example of a small performance study or vignette that animation creates to review all the character-related work together. And here are some of the vignettes created for the other professors. It's an opportunity to test out as much of the workings of the rigs and the CG generally before we start shot production. And here are some of the vignettes created by our Montreal team for their Ozda sequence in film 1. I always laugh at that harmonica playing giraffe. He's just brilliant. He should have added more of his own shots, I think. Animation has many roles during character development. Testing rigs and giving feedback on the modeling and rigging, as mentioned, particularly where it affects story, behavior, character, or expression. Here we have matched a clip in animation that we recorded of Summer walking in a field, so that our riggers and creature effects artists can further develop and test Dr. Dillamond's muscle simulation setup. Animation sets up focused studies on many aspects of his character. Top left, we created a refined, intense level breathing cycle. Top right, we have ears, ear flicks, and posing ears for expressive purposes are an important part of goat behavior. Bottom left was a general purpose mastication study, ensuring that we had a muzzle which could achieve a general naturalistic and fleshy motion. These are only a small handful of what was created, and our goal here is to immerse ourselves in an abundance of reference to find all the details that will help us to create a character that can perform in the most authentic, goat-like way. A good deal of this development is stowed into library for use down the line. So here is a good render of his breathing cycle, which utilizes unique controls along his entire spine, chest, and head, and activates shapes along his abdomen rhythmically. Most of this would be added to a shot during the finaling animation stage. The animator would then adjust the rhythm and to suit the shot and work it in and around the actions and dialogue. The same approach would be taken with ears and eyes and any repeating motion components. The eyes are the central focus for the audience, and it is really important that they look and move both realistically and are simultaneously emotive. We opted to stay with 100% natural goat eyes with the typical horizontal shaped pupil. Human eyes would have been creepy and unsettling. In this reference, we have examples from two angles showing an eye pulse and then the full squeezy animal blink. We use this so as to ensure we have a good match for the mechanical aspects of eye and eyelid operation. Here is the same reference with a render of the matching CG animation screen right. In setting up an eye rig, The blink is obviously the most important component, and seeking a similar amount of fleshiness as the lids close to our chosen reference. This fleshiness is created through triggering the various eye shapes in an overlapped way. The eye follow shapes also add naturalism, and using reference such as this, we can study these shape changes as the eyes rotate. And it goes without saying, the voice for characters like Dr. Dillamond is critical. Around January 2024, when we were underway Dr. Dillamond's development, we did not have a voice yet. The writer's strike in 2023 was having all sorts of knock-ons around the film industry, and here it meant significant delays in signing talent. But we finally had it in February 24 in the form of the amazing Peter Dinklage. We like to have voice actors recorded from multiple angles, giving us performance cues and accents that are authentic and bespoke to the action.
That day, I was shown to their new non-speaking section. She never showed, and no one's seen her since.
So this was a take from the Something Bad sequence in film 1, and Peter Dinklage gave us a lot to draw from here. This particular clip was selected from the voice record brushes to be developed in animation because it showed in a short space a strong range of facial expression from Peter that we could attempt to lock into and channel through Dr. Dillamond. In crafting a performance, we're paying close attention to the eyes and how they might communicate expression and attitude. I mentioned the divergent goat eyes previously. As goats are ruminating herbivores, this makes good sense. Their eyes point out to the side. Giving Dr. Dillamond a sense of directness of gaze, converging his eyes towards a focal point would give him the appearance of intelligence. Converging the eyes forwards like human eyes, directly ahead, and you create a strange, uncanny effect. While if you do it too little, you're back to being an animal again.
That day, I was shown to their new non-speaking section. She never showed.
There was a sweet spot in the middle where we were able to strike the balance between animal and human. Lead animator Darren Rodriguez worked up this test. Key to its success was finding emotive legibility and range in the brows. But for his face to read correctly, we had to get the ears involved to reinforce his facial performance. Along with the pose and attitude in the body, involving his ears enabled us to communicate emotion in a more animal way in wider shots where the face is less readable. This phase is also about laying good groundwork in the mouth shapes, ensuring we are covered for all the shapes that we would need in coming to define his lip sync and expression. While we had a broad array of shapes at our disposal, we found that using the shapes alone resulted in a very stiff, isolated facial performance. We had a range of mechanical controls across Dr. Dillamond's muzzle and face, which were used to reinforce the shape animation work to activate his face more fully. Before moving on to film 2 and our work there, I'm going to show you a short sequence of Dr. Dillamond shots. Stand-in performers were used on set in this beat, as this sequence had a lot of additional actors and extras, and so to ensure their eye lines and reactions were well timed and consistent, and to give the DOP and camera person help in framing as the Dr. Dillamond walked through the set. Our FPS post-viz team then came on board and very quickly placed rudimentary version of the CGI animation with a basic plate cleanup in all the shots, so that the film editor, in this case Myron Kirstein, could then build an edit with John Chu, our director. The first impressions of the film can be had at studio screenings with shots in the state. The animators come on board. We tend to work with a combination of references. Animal video reference for more mechanics, performance reference that they've very often recorded themselves, which are then assembled with the video references from the voice actor. As we block shots, we are trying to find positions in frame and space, finding key eye lines, head positions, and for attitude, as well as key timings. Some of the shots here animated by animator Rodrigo Costa, he recorded his own references, and we really like these and lead into them for Dillamond's performance, whilst only using the voice recording reference for dialogue and lip sync reference.
All right, everyone, settle down, ladies and gentlemen, settle down. Quiet, everyone. Now then, I have read your most recent essays, and I am amazed to report some progress, although some of us still tend to favor form over content, Miss Linda.
Oh, actually, it's Linda, with a G.
Yes, of course. Linda.
No.
John was always clear about emotion and tone when giving directions for the characters. This sequence represents Dillamond in his professional space. He is confident and in control, bantering with the students in his class. In contrast to say how he appears later in the sequence, shocked and dismayed when the message on the board is revealed, and later still, desperate as he is being arrested. Linda. One of the challenges we had to deal with in Wicked for Good was the scope of John Chu's ambition for animal characters required in many scenes. In No Place Like Home, Elphaba is faced with a multitude of animals attempting to escape Oz through a tunnel in the yellow brick road. The filming of the sequence was directly after film 1 back in 2023. At that stage, the action of the animals wasn't clear. When the film editor Maren Kirstein looked at an early assembly cut in early 2025, the story of the refugee animals didn't feature sufficiently. So we were invited to collaborate with John Chu and the film's editorial department to search through second unit material to create suggestions for new angles and shot possibilities that would also feature the animals and offer further interaction for them with Elphaba. For an intense 2-week period, I sat with John Marin and VFX editor Ed Marsh to create these sketch proposals. These were created rapidly in Photoshop, and as you can see, they are not particularly good as drawings, but what they do is rapidly present new ideas, which can in minutes give the editor an alternate take on action for our projected CG VFX work. While a good deal of these ideas fell by the wayside, a great many of the ideas conjured at this point survived into the final film. I see this as having been a very fruitful activity where some meaningful work was achieved rapidly for the film. You can also see, by the comparison I'm showing you here, the work that went into crafting the final images by our environment, lighting, FX and compositing teams. Director John Chu was keen that these animal refugees felt like real inhabitants of Oz, who had grabbed their things in a moment of desperation, with the baggage of various kinds. It was up to us at Framestore to create these families in all shapes and sizes and weave a narrative for them that had continuity throughout the sequence. Including the animal professors, frogs and insects from film 1, we only had 30 character assets to work with, for this and all the other animal sequences in Wicked for Good. Much variation was created through groom and look dev, and through scaling of some characters, implying that they were younger. Judicious use of backpacks and props helped us to create a sense of complexity, and careful shot layout helped us to avoid unwanted repetition. As you can see here, we've got lots of walk cycles, and these are, as mentioned before, core components for animation, both in providing the validation for rigs and as an element that we can use down the line to rapidly block shots. We set up a backpack team that created all the backpacks that worked towards designing, modeling, texturing, and rigging them. Most of the backpack motions you see are a product of rigged motion and creature effects simulations, the exceptions being when backpacks are removed. Elphaba obviously carried the scene here, so everything needed to be kept in sympathy with where she was at. John was keen to establish moments of empathy between them and have them gradually stirred and eventually transfixed by her song. Before starting our work here in London, the London animation team prepared themselves by spending a day visiting Marwell Zoo in Hampshire, where we were able to study giraffes, flamingos, snow leopards, tamarin monkeys, and more in person, and also created a little team bonding. Dulcibel, Elphaba's childhood nanny, appears again in Wicked for Good, Framestore having picked up where Ireland left off with her in film 1. There is much attitude and character to be found by figuring out the movement of the broader masses in a walk cycle, and then how the secondary motions then interrelate. The head's overlapped motion here connoting her size and her weight, and the little shake giving her a little bare authenticity. To follow here is a short progress reel of the moment Dulcibel reveals herself to Elphaba. Top left, I have included the plate containing the stand-in performer recorded on the day, alongside Cynthia Erivo, so you can see the suggested framings we were given. On the bottom left, you'll see a whip animation version containing references of actress Sharon D. Clarke's performance of her lectern read. We used this as a starting point and developed her performance from there. It was particularly important for Dulciber's softness and empathy to read in her performance.
Dulciber, oh, little one. It's become rotten. There's only one thing left for us to do. Escape.
How will you survive?
How will you survive here? No one in Oz will be happy until you're dead.
Here's a nice example of simplicity in a performance. The shot needed to have Dulciber turn to Elphaba with great sadness. Top left is animated Chihan K's first version of Dulciber's look back to Elphaba, when it is revealed that it was she who gave the monkeys wings. In this version, Chihan incorporated an eye dart and a head turn, and it was clear that this was way too much. Instead, we just caught the very end of her head turn. We reduced these even further until it was just the eyes and ears, selling the sadness that the shot needed to convey. The Cowardly Lion featured in film 1 as a cub, and seen here trapped in Dillamond's classroom after Dillamond himself has been incarcerated. Soon to be released by Prince Fira and Elphaba into the Woods. We were tasked on film 2 to realize him in adult form. The Cowardly Lion is an iconic character, with many generations of audiences having seen and grown to love him. Here represented in book illustrations by John Denslow from the 1920s, characterized by his huge head and mane, and always crying into his very long tail.
Shame on you!
What did you do that for? I didn't buy them. Is my nose bleeding?
Well, of course.
We all know he also appears in the iconic 1939 film The Wizard of Oz. John Chu was keen to lean on this legacy of characterization that sits in the mind of the public at large. The size and majesty of this great jungle creature is contradicted by his frightened and anxious manner being at the heart of his comedy. This performance by Bert Lahr utilizes his over-length tail as a prop, fidgeting with it anxiously and wiping away tears. We were keen to build on his legacy in our version. This is Framestore's art department concept for the Cowardly Lion, a majestic lion with an ample mane. To help channel this vulnerable character in a naturalistic way, he was given the puppy eyes, these specifically from an Irish wolfhound. Simply put, sometimes when looking at you, a dog's eyelids are pulled by their muscles in such a way as to reveal a little more sclera in a very particular way, stirring feelings of empathy towards dogs in people. The levator anguli oculi medialis is the very complicated name for the unique muscle that sits above the eye of a dog and is responsible for these as puppy eyes. We studied references like this closely and modelled specific eye shapes, integrating them into the brow razor and side eye follow shapes, modelled in this case by Cowardly Lion facial modeller Anton Magdi. And then triggering them within an animation study closely modelled on the reference allowed us to recreate this effect, here animated by lead animator Darren Rodriguez. The animators could tune this behaviour in when desired. From a full-body physicality point of view, thinking about how to approach our line performances, there's an abundance of sources for how lions walk and move, but rarely do we ever see lions behave fearfully. So it would be a challenge to make this appear natural. We looked again at dogs. Big and ferocious-looking dogs can and do express fear and anxiety in their bodies in ways that we could inherit for the lion. The dropped head, the tail between the legs, the energy of anxious glances. I reckon this guy is more shame than fear, if you ask me. Is this you? But all that fearful looking around and shaking seemed ideal for us to inherit for our huge lion. And so this went into some of the early motion studies, combining a naturalistic lion walk with some of the elements we've just seen in the dog references. In a study here by senior animator Paul Lee, our lions begin off in a conventional walk, but then quickly become anxious. The nervous looking around, looking askance, and of course there was the question of what to do with his tail. John was keen to find novel ways of working with it. It was difficult to do while walking, other than just dragging, so we used it here as a kind of safety blanket or shield for a moment. Underneath all of this, he still needed to be an utterly believable lion, and this just doesn't happen on its own. So we found this clip of a lion containing some small to medium-sized snarls that matched the range of what we were trying to achieve in our shots. Lead animator Darren Rodriguez spent a few weeks matching this muzzle behavior, working with facial modeler Anton Magdi, adjusting face shapes as required to achieve the desired result. The ear twitches here created a nice sense of nervous energy, which we wanted to be able to match. We did this by creating little muscular slide shape attributes that the animators could trigger in conjunction with the ear flicks that can be felt through the groom simulations that occurred on his mane when simulated. When we got to the stage where we needed to be validating our facial shapes for dialogue, the filmmakers weren't quite ready to share who exactly would take the role of voicing him. So for us to refine our facial blend shapes for expression and for dialogue, we inherited the old dev study created for Doctor Dillamond that you saw earlier. So while it's true that this didn't contribute to us finding his character, it was still important work that contributed to his believability, delivering lines and shots. Similar to Dr. Dillamond, creating fax mouth shapes for a creature with a muzzle requires an analysis of the creature's natural movements, and then mapping as much of this into the shapes used for human musculature, as this is the logic by which our facial rigs are set up. The main accommodation that is made here is that some shapes like lip raisers, depressors, and nose wrinklers that only require a single shape for humans are split into two or more to account for the larger expanse of skin and musculature that they cover, allowing animation for more room to overlap things and finesse timings. Although it was only a short moment in the sequence, the lion's appearance interrupting and thwarting Elphaba's pleas to the animal refugees was a lot of fun to work on. I will play the moment as it appeared in the film, and then show you each of the shots along with some of the animators' references to discuss the performances in each.
Don't listen to her! At night, when I close my eyes, I still see that green face.
I can't believe it. Is that you?
Stay back! When I was just a cub, she snatched me from the only home I ever knew.
You were in a cage. If I had left you there, you would never have learned to speak.
They say she's the one who gave the monkeys wings and gave the wizard his spies.
John's brief for the Cowardly Lion was that he was to communicate passive-aggressive energy, as if by being left alone in the forest by Elphaba has injured him emotionally. Here he launches forward to halt the animals joining with Elphaba to stand up for their homeland. He immediately recoils in fear as if frightened by his own voice. The reference top right helped us to give a sense of how sharp yet small-scale motions would work in a big creature like a lion, and the way these motions interrelate mechanically. This is work in progress animation. It's not the final, so you can have a glimpse at that. And we tend to switch off the grooms, the mane, so that we can see the neck, shoulder, and chest motions clearly.
Listen to her! Listen to her! Listen to her!
John was keen from the outset that the lion's tail should be a part of the performance, and the dust and the digital vegetation additions here you see here really help sell the plate integration. Here's a shot designed to show the situation from the animal refugee's point of view. In many cases, the references we found were for isolated actions. Here, a front-legged cross step and another stepping backwards, timed into the scene, helped us keep him feeling on model.
At night, when I close my at night, when I close my at night, when I close my at night, when I close my.
In this shot, animated by senior animator Paul Lee, we cheated him a little closer at the start of the shot to have the action feel a little bit more dynamic. The challenge here was to have the lion feel heavy on his landing before he turns toward Elphaba, cowering.
Face! Face! Face!
If you can see the little Yorkshire Terrier cowering, quivering in the lion at the end, that's exactly what we used.
Face! Face!
Here, senior animator Caterina Rodriguez, amateur dramatics really helped to develop the lion's performance. We were able to figure out together what was going to work before adding too much detail animation-wise. I think she whittled back a performance really nicely in the animation.
Stay back! When I was just a cub, she snatched me from the only home I ever knew.
You were in a cage.
Stay back! When I was just a cub, she snatched me from the only home I ever knew.
All those nervous ear flicks we found when doing the snarl study during the death phase found their way in here. I think they contribute to his anxious demeanor and enliven his mane nicely.
Stay back! When I was just a cub, She snatched me from the only home I ever knew.
You're in a cage.
The thing we are always striving for in a performance is to find the core. Simplicity, removing unnecessary actions and motions, trying to find something authentic and truthful for the character at hand.
They say she's the one who gave the monkeys wings. They say she's the one who gave the monkeys wings. They say she's the one who gave the monkeys wings. They say she's the one who gave the monkeys wings.
Another big sequence we worked on in London was the Wizard's secret prison. Elphaba stumbles on, or is rather shown by Chistery, a secret chamber in the Wizard's Emerald Castle containing animals in various states of anxious incarceration. Elphaba's plates for this sequence contained real cages built on set. And while we selectively retained the details for realism, the entire space was recreated in CG. The sequence is dark, and we weren't sure at the outset of this work how much we would be able to see. In tackling the task of populating these shots with animals, we created about 60 block-level clips, each around 6 to 8 seconds long, containing actions having moments of quietness as well as moments of increased excitement. Some were very simple. The animation clips were published in situ on a sequence level. Naturally, there are duplicates, hopefully none that can be seen. Building these into shots, we could then divide into featured animals and the background animals. In animation, we gave ourselves a very high number of 20 characters maximum for that would be progressed, while the background characters were then picked up by our crowd team, who handled any small notes, intersection fixes, and creature simulation. We also had the chance to continue the Dillamond story arc, showing him here weakened and unable to speak. We refined his groom to be longer and scragglier, containing flecks of dirt and hay. An important moment in which to portray Dillamond with just the right amount of instability. We needed to question whether he would be able to speak and understand Elphaba. This moment became the stimulus for a pivot in Elphaba's story, as she turns fully against the wizard. Overall in Wicked, for good, Framestore handled 291 shots in London and 236 in our Montreal office. As I have shown you today, our per-character asset complexity rose dramatically. Of those 291 shots in London, a significant number had over 30 characters in them each. In this group of shots that I'm showing you here, that complexity rose. Elphaba's anger causes the cages to shake. These cages needed simulating by effects. Then animation would work these motions into the creatures being shook by the cages. Although we built tools to help make this process quicker in animation, it was still a fairly manual process. The crowd team had full body simulation tools in Houdini for the background characters. Once animation, creature effects, and crowd had completed their work, everything then went back to effects for the animation of chains, flying feathers, and debris. In terms of render complexity, Dan Neal, our CG supervisor, said that if we only had a single CPU to render our Film 1 work in London, then we would have to start rendering in 1915 years ago, or around 110 AD. But for our Film 2 London work, we would have needed to start rendering 4,244 years ago, or around the beginning of the Bronze Age in Britain. And with that, I conclude my talk. I'm going to leave you with a photo taken of our London animators and some of the production team enjoying a celebratory lunch together after wrapping animation. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed listening as much as I have talking. Here's a link to a short video, that will tell you a little bit more about our unique approach to animation and filmmaking at Framestore. Thank you.